There's a moment most people never notice. It happens late at night. Your phone is face down. Tomorrow's plan is already broken. You feel it. That quiet disappointment. Not dramatic, just familiar. Here's the uncomfortable part. The version of you that keeps failing isn't lazy. He's negotiated himself into a corner. There's another version of you. Not motivated, not inspired. Just precise. Cold enough to act when feelings don't cooperate. If you met him today, you wouldn't call him confident. You'd call him dangerous because he doesn't explain himself. He doesn't ask permission from his mood. Most people think discipline lives in routines, morning alarms, clean food, long hours. That's noise. The real work happens earlier, in the second where you feel tired and still move. That moment is violent, not loud, just final. Here's the risk nobody says out loud. Every time you listen to your emotions, you train them to rule you. They get smarter. They get louder. So instead of changing your life, try this as an experiment. For 1 week, don't argue with yourself. No inner debate, no explanations. Command, execute, move on, freedom or comfort. Pick one. People who choose comfort call it balance. People who choose freedom accept being misunderstood. And something strange happens when you stop negotiating. Your presence changes. Not because you speak differently, but because nothing inside you is begging anymore. That's when people feel it. They don't know why they hesitate around you. They just do. Here's the practical promise. When your mind stops arguing, your energy stops leaking, you get hours back, clarity back, momentum back. But there's a cost. You won't be liked for this version of you. You'll be harder to read, harder to influence. And that's where the real question appears. Why did you ever need approval from weaker minds in the first place? This isn't self-improvement, it's removal. We're not adding habits, we're cutting dependencies, and we're just getting started. Because the real shift doesn't come from what you force yourself to do. It comes from what you permanently stop listening to. So before we go further, sit with this. If you removed emotion from your decisions for 30 days, who would you become? And who in your life would quietly lose control? Look at the last thing you touched today, your phone. Before you even decided to pick it up, your hand already moved. That wasn't choice. That was training. Most men don't notice this. They call it habit. They call it normal. Here's the quiet risk. If your impulses move faster than your decisions, you're not in control. Something else is. Try a simple experiment, not a belief, a test. For the next few days, notice what you're willing to cut, not add, kill, comfort, or freedom. You can't keep both. Every man who steps out of the loop pays a price. The question isn't whether it's hard, it's whether you're ready to stop pretending you don't see the cost. Watch how people talk. They announce plans before results. They post effort instead of outcomes. They leak intention for attention. That leak matters more than they think. Here's the uncomfortable truth. When you talk about what you'll do, you spend the energy meant for doing it. Pressure escapes. Momentum dies quietly. So change the frame. Don't motivate yourself. Disappear. Silence isn't humility, it's strategy, noise, or power. Pick one. When you stop explaining yourself, something strange happens. People start filling the gaps for you. They wonder, they guess, they project. That tension works for you. There's practical value here. In silence, mistakes stay private. Corrections stay clean. Progress accelerates without interference. Imagine 6 months without announcements. No updates, no signals. Just work, strain, adjustment, repetition. You cut cheap dopamine. You cut social rituals that only exist to keep you small. You cut people who only recognize you when you're distracted, and then you return. Not louder, heavier. You won't need to explain the change. It will sit in your posture, in your pauses, in what you don't rush to say. But this is only the first layer. Silence is just the gate. Because once you stop broadcasting your moves, the real question appears. What else have you been giving away without noticing? You've seen the look before. The pause. The slight tension when you don't explain yourself. It unsettles people. Not because you're aggressive, but because your silence reflects something they avoid. While they were checking reactions, you were stacking hours. Here's the risk nobody admits. Explaining feels safe, but safety is expensive. So try this as a test. Starting today, remove explanations. Not forever. Just long enough to see what breaks. Power or comfort. Only one survives. When you justify yourself, you shrink the result before it exists. When you act without commentary, pressure builds instead of leaking. If you're tired, work quietly. If you're hurt, repair in private. If you're winning, disappear and continue. Results have a voice. And they speak without asking permission. But silence is only the surface. There's a deeper layer most people never touch. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Disciplined people feel everything. The pull to stop, the ache to quit, the heaviness in the chest at 4 a.m. They just don't negotiate with it. So shift the frame. Not motivation, conversion. Emotion isn't the enemy, it's raw material. Love or fear, warm or cold. Pick what works when warmth disappears. You won't love the process when it matters most. Passion fades exactly when it's needed. That's not a flaw. That's a pattern. Duty survives where desire dies. Here's the practical edge. When you act against your feelings, you train a different reflex. One that doesn't wait for the right mood. Think about it. If someone knows you only move when you feel good, they already know how to stop you. But if effort increases when you're tired, if focus sharpens when you're angry, if consistency survives heartbreak, you become hard to read, unpredictable. And this is where things start to change. Because once emotion stops deciding your actions, something else quietly takes control. The question is not whether you feel resistance, it's what you do with it next. And that part hasn't even begun yet. Watch what happens the moment things get uncomfortable. Most people slow down, you don't. That's the part that bothers them. They expect you to crack, to pause, to complain. You keep moving. Here's the quiet shift they don't see. Your actions stopped asking your feelings for permission. Think about weather. You look outside. It's raining. You notice it. You still leave the house. That's the experiment. Not ignoring emotion, downgrading its authority, control or comfort. One rules, the other follows. When emotion runs the system, plans collapse fast. When emotion becomes data, execution survives. Try this in the smallest moment. The alarm hits, your eyes open. You have seconds, not minutes. If you wait, the excuses arrive fully dressed. They sound reasonable. They always do. So change the rule. 3 seconds. No discussion. 1, 2, 3. Move. This isn't discipline. It's bypass. Your mind is built to protect energy, not create leverage. It will always argue for staying where you are. Here's the practical edge. When the body moves first, the mind falls in line later. Not the other way around. Over time, something rewires. You stop trying to be strong. You just function. And that scares people more than motivation ever could. Because when mood no longer controls output, pressure loses its grip. That's freedom. But there's another layer most people avoid. Look at how rarely they're alone. Noise fills every gap. Voices, screens, background sound. Silence makes them uneasy. Not because it's empty, because it talks back. So test this too, reduce the noise. Not forever. Long enough to hear what surfaces, independence or reassurance. Pick carefully. Isolation sharpens focus. It removes feedback you didn't need. It shows you which thoughts are yours and which ones you borrowed to feel safe. This isn't about cutting everyone off. It's about standing without leaning. And once you can do that, the real work begins. Because when nothing external steadies you, nothing external can shake you either. The question is what you'll hear when the noise finally stops. Look at where your time actually goes. Not where you planned it to go. Who pulls you away when you try to focus? That gap matters. It's where your potential leaks out. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Not everyone around you wants you to win, not consciously. But your progress makes their stillness louder. So run a test. Step back, not in anger, in precision, closeness or progress. You can't maximize both. When you start moving forward, something predictable happens. Comments change, jokes sharpen. Concern suddenly sounds like criticism. You've changed. You're obsessed. You're not fun anymore. They're not wrong. Fun is comfortable. Comfort keeps people average. This is the risk. If you keep everyone comfortable, you stay small. So change the frame. You're not abandoning people. You're protecting the mission, mastery, or approval. Pick one. Here's the practical value. Isolation removes interference. It exposes what's yours and what you borrowed to fit in. Close the door. Silence the phone. Sit with the work. What shows up first won't be motivation. It will be boredom, restlessness, old fears looking for exits. That's the real training. When no one is watching, excuses lose their audience. You face what you usually avoid, and you either retreat or adapt. If you win there quietly, something changes when you return. You don't sell confidence, you carry it. People notice, not because you demand attention, but because you don't need it. And here's the paradox. The moment you stop needing people, they become curious. They sense fullness. No hunger, no grasping. That's influence without effort. But isolation isn't the end. It sharpens something else. Because once you're no longer predictable to others, you start asking a harder question. What happens when you stop being predictable to yourself? Notice how people test you. A comment, a delay, a little pressure, just to see what happens. Most reactions are automatic, defensive, emotional, predictable. That's the opening. Here's the uncomfortable truth. When people know how you react, they know how to move you. Not because they're evil. Because leverage is easy when it's visible. So change the frame. Not dominance, control, love or fear, attachment or consequence. One fades when it's inconvenient. The other holds when things get ugly. Watch what discipline actually does. It removes reactions. Someone throws an insult, you pause, turn back to the work. A problem hits, no drama, just assessment, money drops. You don't spiral, you rebuild. This silence isn't weakness, it's confusing to the wrong people. Because manipulation needs movement, emotion, buttons to press. When there are no buttons, the game collapses. Here's the practical edge. Consistency turns you into something hard to deal with. Not loud, not threatening, inevitable. Picture a man who shows up every day, no speeches, no excuses, no visible cracks. You can't rush him, you can't distract him, you can't wait him out. That's what scares people, not force, momentum. This isn't aggression, it's pressure without noise, like ice, slow, certain. But there's a cost. You have to give up sympathy. Stop narrating your pain. Stop posting your bad days. Stop looking for relief through attention. That's risky because sympathy feels like support, but it's also a signal. When you show where it hurts, you show where to aim. So try this experiment. Handle damage privately. Fix yourself without witnesses. Not from shame, from strategy. Stand straight. Say less. Move anyway. Because when you stop offering access to your weakness, something shifts. People don't know how to read you anymore. And the real question appears, what happens when nothing outside of you can tell whether you're winning or bleeding? Picture this. Everything is going wrong at once. Messages piling up. Money tight. Plans collapsing. And still, your face doesn't change. That's not pretending. That's positioning. You're not lying to the world. You're deciding what frame it sees. Here's the uncomfortable truth. People panic when they sense loss of control. If they see you calm, they hesitate. So try this as a test. When pressure hits, slow down instead of reacting. Speak less. Move deliberately. Chaos or command. Only one can lead. Now look closer at why most efforts die. Not because people don't try, because their standards forgive failure too easily. Almost becomes acceptable. Trying becomes enough. That's where momentum leaks. Raise the floor, not the ceiling. History shows a pattern. Strong systems don't fall from attack. They decay from comfort. And look around. Heat at the press of a button. Food without effort. Endless distraction, sugar, stimulation. This world trains softness by default. So change the frame again. Discipline isn't punishment, it's resistance, comfort or strength. Pick carefully. Set rules that make no sense to observers. Early mornings, unnegotiable details. Food choices that don't need explaining. You don't announce it, you live it. Here's the practical edge. High standards compress decisions. Less debate, less drift, more output. But something else happens. Your consistency becomes a mirror. People feel exposed around you, not because you judge them, because your presence removes their excuses. So they label you. Obsessed, extreme, unreasonable. Let them. Lowering your standard won't make them rise. It will only make you smaller. Time is the final test. You don't get it back. Every scroll, every pointless argument, every worry about what you can't control is borrowed from the future you claim to want. So here's the open question. If you treated your time like territory, what would you defend harder tomorrow? Notice how easily your day gets accessed. Messages, calls, small requests that feel harmless, each one takes a slice. At the end, you're tired, but nothing important moved. That's the personal hit. Your time isn't being stolen, it's being offered cheaply. Here's the uncomfortable part. People waste what costs them nothing. So change the frame. Not productivity, scarcity. Make access rare. Speak less. Decide faster. Availability or value. You don't get both. Run this as an experiment. Short replies. Clear boundaries, no explanations. Something strange happens. When your time becomes expensive, people arrive prepared. They get to the point. That's the practical return. Less noise, more leverage. Discipline creates distance. Distance creates altitude. Most people never leave the crowded level. Same conversations, same complaints, same excuses circulating in the same thin air. Higher up, it's quieter. Not because it's lonely, because fewer can breathe there. And this is where the real shift begins. Because to stay there, something has to die. Not metaphorically, functionally. The version of you that needs approval, the version that softens ambition to stay liked, the version that apologizes for wanting more. Look at him closely. He's clever. He sounds reasonable. He knows exactly when to speak up, especially when things get hard. Just rest today. Just one distraction. You deserve it. That voice isn't your enemy. It's your past trying to survive. So reframe the conflict. This isn't self-improvement. It's separation. Future or familiarity. One must lose. Close the door deliberately. On old habits, on old identities, on old stories you keep retelling because they explain too much. This part costs you. People won't understand the silence. Some won't follow you there. That's the tax. Don't negotiate it. Pay it. Because on the other side, something lighter moves. Decisions get cleaner. Emotions stop voting. The world stops feeling random. You begin to see patterns. Timing, position, consequence. Not a playground anymore, a board. And here's the final discomfort. The new version of you doesn't need reassurance. He doesn't ask if this is okay. He just moves pieces. That version should unsettle you a little. If it doesn't, you haven't gone far enough yet. The real question isn't whether you're ready to become him. It's how long you'll keep protecting the version that keeps you where you are. Watch what happens when someone enters a room without rushing. No checking pockets, no scanning faces, just stillness and motion. You feel it before you name it. Here's the personal hit. That presence doesn't come from dominance, it comes from control. And that's the uncomfortable truth. Power over others is loud. Power over yourself is quiet. And quiet power unsettles people. So shift the frame. This isn't about influence, it's about ownership. When you stop fighting your own impulses, your body carries a different signal. People move aside. Not out of fear, out of instinct, comfort, or command. Choose carefully. There's a reason the noise in your head never stops. It's not stress, it's preparation debt. Anxiety hums when you know you're avoiding something, when promises stay internal, when effort stays theoretical. Run this experiment. Prepare until there's nothing to explain. No stories, no excuses. Something unexpected happens. The buzzing fades. Here's the practical payoff. When you know you've done the work, the future loses its teeth. Other people stop feeling threatening. Not because you're better, because you're ready. Failure changes shape too. It stops being a verdict. It becomes feedback. But don't romanticize what comes next. This freedom is sharp, cold, quiet. Picture the edge of a hill at night. Below, lights, warmth, noise. Up top, wind, hunger, space, safety, or autonomy. You don't get both. Most choose warmth, not because it's better, because it's easier to explain. But the people who shape reality often do their work unseen, cut off, misunderstood, stripped of comfort. Not chasing approval, chasing clarity. That's the risk. Discipline doesn't ask to be liked, it asks to be honored. And here's the open question you can't dodge. If everything external was taken from you, what part of you would still stand? Because discipline is the one thing that can't be confiscated. They can remove comfort, they can remove status, they can remove applause, but they can't take what you've built into your spine. And this isn't the end, it's the threshold. What you do next determines whether this becomes isolation or authority. Picture the moment something is taken from you. A job ends. A title disappears. People stop returning calls. Notice what's still there. That's the personal hit. Most people confuse identity with position. When the position collapses, they do too. Here's the uncomfortable truth. What survives loss is what you actually own. So change the frame. Not security, durability. They can remove access, they can rewrite stories, they can erase status, but they can't reach what's been trained into you, comfort or endurance. Pick one early or life picks for you. Look around. The world is louder than ever, more reactive, more fragile. That's not a threat. That's a gap. While others soften, tension sharpens you. While they scatter attention, you narrow it. While they chase ease, you move toward friction. Here's the practical advantage. Chaos punishes the unprepared. It rewards the disciplined. People will feel it, not admiration at first, unease, because you become a reference point, a reflection of what they postponed becoming. They'll watch, they'll talk, they'll invent reasons to explain your difference. Let them. You don't need agreement, you need momentum. This path doesn't warm you, it tests you. It's quiet, steep, often solitary. But something has changed. You're not hoping anymore, you're equipped. If you're still here, if this hasn't pushed you away, that already says something. Not that you're special, that you're willing, and that's rare. So here's the open question you have to answer alone. When comfort calls you back, when noise tries to pull you down, what will you choose to protect? Because the old version of you would have already looked for permission. That version doesn't make it past this point. Now the work is quieter, colder, more precise, and it hasn't even really begun yet.